only 64 jellyfish out of 2,000 that were under you. That would be equivalent to 2 giant jellyfish in the movie Godzilla, where they're really accurate at hitting these giant, momentous and so in a quarter mile of, you know, 200 or 400 or maybe 1,000 jellyfish on the surface of this would equal just one monster jellyfish the size of the one on the left and the one on the right. If you have to go as a human body over both of these bushes, you'd probably touch as many flowers on one and the other of upwards to 2,000. So if you got stung by... Responses to things are important because everyone's interactions are different. Why? We've got our skin and stuff behind it moving around all the time because everything on land has a heart pumping blood. So things that don't have hearts pumping blood, like a jellyfish, what would be going on about their skin? A barracuda is the size of a bird if it's a crane with legs and it's flying. So if you have a 5-foot crane, you'd have a 5-foot barracuda. On that note, a worm is something that would be, if it's solidified, a person's spinal fluid and brain stem, all of the brain dehydrated fluid, put into oval shape like a snake. And the difference between a worm and a snake is just a bit of size. So if you have a barracuda and an anglerfish, their face looks the same. But if you had a whole bunch of giant barracudas, like 5 feet, an anglerfish was the shape of this barracuda because they both have the same faces if they bred together. The light on anglerfishes were illuminating under people, and barracudas aren't that good at striking. A guy fought one off with a camera he had underwater when he was scuba diving. So, did anglerfish not strike because sometimes sharks will circle you and then just go away like a hammerhead? But these people saw lights underneath them flashing for like an hour in the water, and I'm like, that's probably anglerfish. Because right before they had plankton glowing around them each time they were treading water on their hands. So that's equivalent to an ionosphere. And ionospheres are divided by two wavelengths. And the interior of a second wavelength of the ionosphere is a like anionic sphere, and it's a representation of almost any crystalline structure off of E8, which is a representation of a giant crystalline structure. That includes infinities. Coach Mo. And inclusive of infinities is the ionosphere, because that gets two wavelengths, because crystalline structures are very prominent in geometrics, and the shape of a photon, they said, is a packet, which we think to be as rectangular. I've scared this bird. How much? A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about have to do with identity and how much a secure one is fastened in order different circumstances might occur and it lost. If that is ever a case, the end might be hard to find. So crystal is anything that has a mutual arrangement on Earth or anywhere in the universe. And it's also can be of three makeups: molecules, atoms, and ions. Ions have properties that are specific because they're attuned with wavelengths to have specific denominations. In a denominator, if it's common, it will retain the following two rules if it's an ionosphere. It will have light within it have a certain angle that correlates to perfect polarization. and from that angle is respect to all the other ones where the parabolas of the apex in it falls. But it's nonetheless a definite shape due to one of its wavelengths. A second wavelength is attributed to an anti-ionosphere. I forget how to categorize this, but it has a definite amount of other really generic geometric properties. So when anything has ions in it, and there's a lot of them, it can pretty much just be a crystal if it has that property of wavelengths. A dreadlock is almost a lot like a regular lock, but how big is a lock compared to the tightness of a dreadlock? There's one in comparison of what Gunplay has in Miami. Let me show you a reference. Okay, so possums are in this town that I'm in, prevalently on the street dying or just playing possum. That being said, they're definitely able to hang on their tails in trees. I've never seen it in my entire life, and I don't want to. But if you're walking under a tree and you hit one, it could be the same size as a bat, because they're also in our town. But by no means necessary would you run into one and the other after you run straight. Let me reiterate, after you hit one and then another, when you're walking straight, if you hit a bat and you run forward and it flies and it catches onto you, and then you hit a possum as it's stuck onto your neck biting you, because a possum was hanging upside down and that possum latches into your mouth, its head, and starts biting. Well, that's why you need measures in order to make this stuff not be an occurrence. How I view monster movies is equal to someone in the ocean if they had to swim across a whole bunch of a flock or a pack of not just fish, but jellyfish, and they were the size, well, of a cloud of them that ranged almost a quarter of a mile. So swimming over a quarter of a mile, hitting as many jellyfish as there are below you. So the surface of this entire thing would be equal to the jellyfish all around the exterior. And that's how to view atoms and electrons on the window of the clouds, surface area of the clouds of it. So this lady who was in the ocean for over 24 hours, after 12 hours, she had to just keep looking for sharks. And all the wave crescents kind of resembled fins. And at the very end, she did find one and she wanted it to bite her. This, I thought, was a bird. And there's, in Wisconsin, these birds called redwings, and they've got like these shoulder pads. So if you see them as they're flying, those are their shoulders, like these orange things, and it looks like these Metroid video games where they have like these little saucers that fly around. That would be their base of their saucer where their little brain is. Because birds do have bird brains, and that's what you see underneath their beak, or on top of it, I mean. At an ATM machine, my card will read if it goes fully in that way or fully in horizontally. It will not process because it's cracked if it is put in halfway. Unfortunately, all the cash registers only allow credit cards to go in halfway that I've seen so far the entire year. Some guy said parts in China are made from objects, and they're all the same parts except for if they're made in the United States, it's a lot different. what he meant by this was it would cost less, but this same thing is the same parts. It's just going to be at the same price, means the middleman got the cut. Much of this bird's beak is just its body. Granted, it's just a yellow piece on its face.